For all of that, charities and organisations are becoming increasingly worried about the occurrence of what's called will fraud.
Will fraud is where someone attempts to deceive and manipulate you to gain control over your savings and assets after you die. It often goes undetected and can be committed by those closest to you.
So when Rebecca Creed lost her auntie, her family were confused when the will's executor failed to get in touch. Now, their suspicions led them to discover Rebecca's aunt and uncle had been the target of a fraudster who scammed the family out of the £350,000 of inheritance.
And Rebecca joins us now alongside solicitor Paul Britton. Welcome
Morning.
to both of you.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for sharing this story, first of all. Rebecca, tell us a little bit about your uncle and auntie, first of all. Kathleen and Desmond, tell us about them.
Yes, they were a lovely married couple living in Cornwall. Their family was everything to them, and they lived for each other.
Yeah.
They lived independently up until Auntie went into residential care, looked after extremely well. And like I say, the family meant everything to them. So in my younger years, we saw them at Christmases and family gatherings, and my gran and elderly aunts lived in one particular street, a row of houses, and then me and my cousins, we would probably often see each other, meet at Gran's, and then my auntie and uncle, who didn't have a car, would bus in.
Yeah.
And then there's, like, you know, with the chats. And then as we grew older, we'd see them less frequently as, you know, we grew up and we had all our families. And but we still kept in touch. And Mum and Dad would be on the phone to them as needed, and every checking in and find out what was going on, and, you know, regularly.
I mean, I think that sounds like quite a typical relationship and upbringing. You know, you're so close with your aunties, uncles, and then as everyone gets older, you kind of go, but you still do that.
Oh, we care.
Right, that fondness is still there.
Yes.
But obviously, then there's a kind of a disconnect, isn't there? So because you want to be looking after them. So firstly, did they ever discuss their will at all with you guys?
No, but they discussed. I remember being at home on maternity leave, and my mum had said Uncle Desmond's rung 2:15, so Thomas would have been about what. And it stuck in my mind because she said, "Oh, they just want your current address," and because I'd got married and changed address, they wanted all our details to make sure that they had the address. So we didn't know, we didn't ask any questions because we're not.
Why would you? Yeah.
Well, we're not like that.
And was that to be executors on the will?
No.
It was just literally
they wanted to up the address. So Mum and Dad assumed that they were checking out addresses and they were doing some kind of bequest of some kind on the will.
OK, so let's bring the story up to date. So who was John? When did you hear of him? And then when were your suspicions alerted with John?
Mr Harris was referred to, I think, Mum and Dad. You know, who'd say, "Oh, how is Auntie Kathleen? Oh, John's doing this for them, that for them, whatever, helping them out or taking them to an appointment, whatever."
You didn't know who this John was?
No, but, like, Mum and Dad had checked out and gone to the solicitor.
Sure.
Because my dad's an ex-legal executive. He's now of ill health. Hence why my mum had to sort of deal with the action fraud and subsequent conversations.
Yes.
He was somebody that was spoken of as in a positive way.
Yeah.
A friend. And then I remember seeing my uncle when he was ill at the local hospital, because I lived where he was hospital, and Mum and Dad went. Mum went with me, and I remember Uncle Desmond saying, "This is when Auntie was still alive." And Uncle Desmond, we went to the hospital, and he said, "Oh, John's doing that for me." So, you know, we didn't think anything was amiss.
I mean, that's quite a common occurrence, isn't it?
And it was done legally.
A friend with a neighbour or someone like that, and then you know that's.
Well, I think subsequently we found out that the friendship wasn't quite as we thought it was, obviously, but we didn't realise that he'd made their acquaintance on a bus. There was lots of things that came out through the court case, which was quite harrowing.
And then you found all that out.
It was quite harrowing to listen to.
Sadly, Desmond did pass away.
Yes, he did.
At what point did you think, oh, something's not right here?
Well,
something's not adding up.
Alan Tucker, which I can give him a nod, bless him, he's passed away. He was the dear cousin and an executor on the legal will in 2015. He was in Southampton, and this, which we now know is the fake will, he knew that it wasn't a genuine will because it was like 95% to Mr Harris and 5% to Alan Tucker. Alan knew that that was wrong. And he, quite emotional really, because he reached out through a solicitor to try and challenge that.
Yeah.
And then sadly, he never got anywhere. And then he made contact with my parents, and they all grew up in the same village, you know, back in Cornwall, you know, small little village. They all got together. So they contacted each other, on these 70-year-olds on Facebook.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until 6 months after my auntie had died that Mum and Dad got involved, because they were sort of alerted to the fact that they were expecting some conversation. So they reached out to their solicitor, Ben Sidgwick at Codes, and he noticed on the piece of paper that the will pack that you can buy from W.H. Smith had a different date on the back, a later date than the supposed signature that my auntie was supposed, which has now been proved that that was not her signature.
So...
And there was 2 drug addicts that witnessed this.
Oh my goodness.
So let's bring Paul. I mean, just to sort of to summarise here. So that he imitated their handwriting to forge new wills, giving him the majority of the estate. He paid 2 vulnerable local men to witness the documents, paying them small amounts of cash, and made changes that passed on £85,000 directly to him. The investigation also found that he'd been taking advantage of his access to the bank accounts. Where do we start with this? How do you combat this kind of thing?
Look, it is difficult. What we're seeing here is, in Rebecca's case, that the will... It's right that testators or testatrix update their will, and they quite often do. But there's usually about 10 or 20 years between a will that they do in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and then they're like, right, actually, it dawns on them. Life has moved on, things has changed.
Yeah.
It's time to update it. Rebecca was called in 2015 for her address. That's when the genuine will was done. Now, between then and 2018, there was a material change. It went from the family getting 75% to nothing.
Yeah.
Wiped out. And this guy was getting 25%. How can you identify it? The type of people that you've got to look for in society are those who are vulnerable. But what does vulnerable look like? If they're on their own and they haven't got family visiting them, this is actually there are very rare facets to this case, to Rebecca's case. They did see their family, but quite often what you find is it's really an individual who isn't visited, doesn't have many friends. So we always say what you've got to do is you've got to check in on people at regular periods. If you're a neighbour, be neighbourly, think community. I don't mean do it every day or every week. Don't be intrusive. But at least 3 monthly, every half year, just knock on the door, see if they need anything, any help. That's one of the main things that you can do. Assist them if they need some assistance, for example, going to do their will, provide that assistance. What you can't do is, if you get a list of solicitors, you don't go with them. You can drop them off, don't go in. There can't be any undue influence or manipulation, leave something to me.
Just really briefly, in terms of people with their own will, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them? Would it be to pick your power of attorney or pick your executors, like people you've known all your life? Or in...
So let's just distinguish those. So you've got a power of attorney, that's in life. So you pick someone to deal with your affairs in life. When you pass, the power of attorney has no power. We then look to your will to see who you've named as your executors. So one's during life, one's after. Quite often they're the same. If you're doing a power of attorney, it's sensible to have a solicitor as a backup attorney. And if you're doing your will and you're naming executors, it's also sensible to have a solicitor as a backup executor as well.
We have run out of time.
OK.
Good for this man is actually in prison now.
Yes.
He's locked away.
Yes.
I hope that you and your family can get some recompense for everything, and you will get that money back eventually. I really do, Rebecca.
It's to their estate and their memory that we want this restored to what their wishes.
I agree.
Thank you.
I agree. Thank you for joining us and telling your story.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Just wanted to say thank you for visiting our This Morning YouTube channel. Now, listen, we upload new content every day, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. And we'll see you in the morning.